Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I'll have a story on Jaden Daniels coming out Monday, I believe it is, and just kind of wrapping up his spring. And I think you'll enjoy reading it. So check that out on ESPN.com on Monday. And for you Gold members who joined on the Logan Paulson Zoom, I hope you enjoyed it. I know he did. He liked the questions that you guys asked. We had about 40 minutes in there with him, and everybody got a couple questions in. So it was really good insight and the ability to ask those questions from somebody who knows. And so I hope you enjoyed that very much. And there you go. We'll do more of those in the future. Anyway, let's wrap up the final day of minicamp. And now we're off. We're off for about 5-6 weeks or so. I'm expecting training camp to begin around July 24th or 25th, right in that range. And so they are off until then. And I'm not off. I will be doing more of these, but wrapping up the final day. So I'm going to get into the final practice, but before I get there, I want to start with kind of wrapping up a little bit of the offseason. There's going to be a lot of talk about that in the coming weeks or so, or maybe a week or so. I'm going to be talking to Bram Weinstein, have others on to talk about that as well. And so I'll get into more of that in depth down in future episodes. But from my own take, a couple things really jumped out. And, again, having covered this team for a long, long time, I think one of the things that they really did this offseason, and I don't know how many wins it's going to translate into this season, and I'm taking a different view than I know as a fan base. You guys are tired of waiting, and I don't blame you. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's all going to be perfect down the road. I don't know. But what I do know is that they're doing things now that have better long-term effects than any staff I've seen who has come in here in a long time. And it maybe been allowed to do that. Like when the Shanahans came in here, I think they could have done that too. I just don't think they had the infrastructure outside of the coaching staff to pull that off. And so, but here, I think you have a lot more of that. And I think, so for this offseason, it's probably done the best job of laying the foundation for the future as any that I've been around in a while. Now, they have to make it pay off. You have to protect the quarterback. You have to make sure that you have the talent around him, et cetera. You still got to you got to make sure you have the right personnel in there. But as far as just establishing a tone for the organization, it's so much better. And when during the coach search, one of the things I heard about Dan Quinn, and I talked to somebody who coached with him during a bad year in Atlanta. He said that he felt like he was the best coach he'd been around at setting a foundational tone for an organization. And I can see that. And I think it's little things like, for example, today out at the practice, the cafeteria workers were out there. Now, is that a big deal? Well, no, they're the cafeteria workers. Their job is to cook for the players, right? That's what they're paid to do. They've also been dumped on because of those NFLPA surveys, right? And it's not because of the food, folks. It just isn't. The food is always good. And, but Dan Quinn invites them to come out to practice rather than sitting back in there and cooking and getting ready for them. It's a little thing. But I think when you're trying to inject life into an organization and make people feel appreciated, those are the things that you do. And I can tell you, one of the big things throughout the previous era was people not feeling appreciated. And you want to know why people would talk a lot to the media and why certain things would get out. It's because people didn't feel they were underpaid and underappreciated. Those are two bad traits for an organization. And I've told you this before. I think like the Shanahan saw that too. When they came here, they thought, oh, you got an owner who's going to pay, and people must be happy there. Blah blah blah. They got here, and I was talking to one of the staffers, said the first day they came here, they realized they were wrong. Like people were upset here because they felt like they were underpaid and underappreciated. And they realized then that Dan Snyder paid for surface level things, player salaries, for example, but did not care about other employees, kind of, faceless and nameless or whatever. So I think when you get somebody who does that, again, is having the cafeteria workers out there going to lead to another win this offseason? Or this season? Well, no. But it certainly adds a different element to this franchise. And I think when you can have more people who feel a certain way, I just think people feel better about going to work. And it's not just about the players, it becomes about an organization and people feeling like what they do matters. Because anywhere you work, I don't care where you work. If you work in a big company and you're down on the lower ladder, if the higher ups notice your work, you feel different. And I think that's something that's, again, I don't want to go overboard on that. I just think it was a cool gesture for them to make, and for those guys to be out there. And so, anyway, so that's one, but that's the kind of that's the foundation I think that's being laid. I think players certainly seem more upbeat. I can tell you, when Terry McLaurin was very, very energetic about all the changes, the quarterback, et cetera. I can tell you it was genuine. And, I've been around McLaurin enough to know when he's very genuine and sincere about what he's saying. And I'm telling you, in that one, very, very sincere in what he said. So that to me, so I'm focusing on that because I don't know how good they're going to be this year based on this spring. It's really hard to tell. There's so many changes with the staff, changes with just in terms of scheme and all that. How's that going to play out? Will this line come together? I mean, listen, you'd like to sit here and say, oh, this offense is going to be awesome. I don't know that. I think Jaden Daniels will be a good quarterback. I don't know when, because do they have enough right now? What I know is you have a new system and a rookie quarterback, and you're going to have 3 new starters on that line now. If Cornelius Lucas starts, he's a guy who's been here, but he's been a part-time starter here. And so that at least there's familiarity with some of the other guys in the line, but it's still a new line, another new line. And it's hard to change lines all the time. The only starter who was here 2 years ago was Sam Cosmi. Everybody else is different. Again, Lucas was here and he did start games. So that's good. But that's assuming Lucas ends up starting. And I don't know that, Trent Scott may end up starting. I'd certainly give Lucas the edge over that. But, in the private Zoom I had, Logan Paulson went into some detail about how Cornelius Lucas is fit within the system, and also Trent Scott's fit, and then Coleman, how, his development too. So, but all that, we don't know how that's going to be answered. Is it possible that there's a tackle somewhere else who comes in? Yeah, but it's really hard to go out and get a high quality tackle that everybody wants in the end of August. Those guys make starting lineups. They don't make waivers. So, you might be able to get a guy, again, we'll see down the road. But my point is, we don't know how that's going to go. I don't know, have they solved the corner position? I can tell you what I see now, but I don't know if that's solved. We won't know until the pads come on, until you see those joint practices, until you get in the games. That's when you start collecting information about the immediacy or the immediate outlook for the team. But to me, again, long-term, it's just set up better, because when you inject that kind of life into organization, I think you can go out there and endure some early speed bumps, roadblocks, whatever. If players see it wasn't great here, but it's building here, and they can see short-term, long-term, and obviously not everybody's going to be here long-term. But if guys see that and they're buying in, they can see, and they see the quarterback looking good and developing, it can still provide that energy moving forward. That, now I would expect you got to go out there and, to me, you win 7 games or so, right? At least, right? Because if all these things have changed and it was so bad last year, all that change should lead to something better. But we don't know. But that's, so like I said, there's so many questions still to be answered. But you see all the positive signs behind the scenes, and the way Jaden Daniels approaches the game and approaches his work. He embraces the work. That's important. Now he's got to go do it on the field. We don't know what he's going to look like there. We just know what we hear, what we've seen in the spring, and it's all been good. And is there a difference between him and the other rookies I've seen over the years? Yes, there is. But you still got to go out there and make it work. And so those are the questions that we don't know yet, and we won't know. But I would still say, even if they go 7-10, I'd still say they've laid a good foundation for the future. And I think that again, in the past, I always felt like, could they sneak in and get 10 wins, 11 wins? Well, maybe, but could they get that the next year? And the answer was probably going to be no. because shoot, folks, and when's the last time they've done that? They haven't haven't had that kind of success in a long, long, long time. And so that's why I say, I think so when you wrap up the offseason, I think the key moves were hiring Adam Peters and hiring Dan Quinn too. And I say that because like that energy comes from him. It doesn't just come from change. It comes from people who are now in the change and the people that he brings in. And, for all the people who wanted Ben Johnson, like, could he be a good head coach in the future? Sure, I guess. We don't know. I know that, he was talking the other day in Detroit about how he'd like to basically wanted to go somewhere where he could have a better chance of getting a second contract. Well, good luck with that, because the places where guys get fired, it's because they're not very good, and you're leaving the cupboard bare for the most part, unless you think you're going to take, unless maybe he thinks he'll take over for, somewhere where a coach retires from a good spot. I don't know. But the point is, like, that's hard to do. And, you had the second pick and you had Jaden Daniels coming out, but that's his own program. And maybe he will be that. But my point is, I don't think he hires a staff that provides this kind of energy and boost in the organization. I just don't. I think the more you're around Dan Quinn, how well he does, I think he was the right guy for what this organization needs right now, and a good veteran coach who can be paired with a young or a first-time general manager, not young, but first-time general manager. So I think those are big. And then obviously Jaden Daniels. And I would say the fourth one in that is Bobby Wagner, because the tone he presents is just tremendous for what they need, and the leadership he provides. Like, the leadership aspect is another big deal with guys like Eckler and Zach Ertz. I mean, you see Ertz constantly. You saw it again today after a play in the red zone. One of the first things, Jaden Daniels goes back and starts talking to Ertz about a particular route, and you can see Ertz motioning with his hands, like, what he was doing or whatever. Those are the kind of things that help. And having a quarterback who seeks that out is good. And then having veterans like Ertz, Eckler, or even Wagner, he's done this. Jeremy Reeves has done this with him, with Daniels. Those things matter. And so I think like that leadership all matters. Health will matter. That's a TBD, because nobody knows how that's going to go in a season. But getting those leaders in here in the offseason, I think were very big. So a lot of good positive signs for long-term growth. I just don't know what it'll mean for this year, and we'll sort of stay tuned on that. Anyways, let's get to the final day of practice. Dan Quinn was the only one we talked to. Wrapped up practice after about an hour. Very, very hot, I will say. I still feel like I got some sweat attached to my body. I can't wait to get done with this so I can go take a quick shower. Anyways, so he said, one of the things he said, no decision on who's the starting quarterback, because, Jaden Daniels started this week, or he was the main guy or he's the only, back up here. Let me get this out right. Jaden Daniels worked exclusively with the first group this week. In the past, he'd worked some with the first group, but it was always Marcus Mariota was the first quarterback out there. This week, it was Jaden Daniels. Now, Quinn said that was by design, that they knew they were going to handle it that way. But it's also listen, let's be real here. It's an indication of where Daniels is trending. And I would say this, you can't sit there and you cannot watch practice and come away thinking that Mariota has any sort of lead in this quarterback competition. You just can't. Now, there's a lot more to learn about Jaden Daniels, and Logan on our Zoom talked about like just him needing to be more consistent. And that's true. And, there's sometimes the red zone, you see that. And other times today, I felt that he had a couple of really good plays in the red zone today. So, but the bottom line is, he's like, there's nothing there. That was not a declaration as to who's going to be the starter, who is the starter and all that. Again, we all know where it's going. They drafted this kid because they really liked him. And then the kid, then Daniels during the spring shows exactly why they like him. And they see he's getting better. Those guys start the season. When he gets in there is irrelevant. He will be in there at some point during training camp, maybe even to open, and he should be. But I think what the key is they're not making this into some big deal. I felt like, Ron kind of painted himself into a corner the last couple of years with some proclamations about guys and how it handled, and it becomes a bigger story maybe than it needs to be. Then Quinn just kind of like, deflected it. Nothing, no declaration here. So the same thing about the offensive line, not really focused on that right now, just getting out there competing. And when they need to make a decision, they will. but I don't think it's the same with the quarterback. I don't think they're going to be pushed into making a decision. I think that's kind of how they felt last year with Howell after training camp. But I don't think you're going to see them pushed into anything with this one. But again, we all know where this is going. The other, speaking of like the staff and all that, like one of the things that Quinn did is he had Ken Norton, linebackers coach, talk to the team, because he's a guy who went to 3 straight Super Bowls, back to back to back. Doesn't happen very often. So I think he wanted the players to hear, hey, this is what it takes to get there. Now they do have a couple guys who have gotten there now with, because obviously, with Ertz and with Wagner. So they have some guys who have gotten there. Norton's been there. Quinn has been there too as a coach. So a couple times. So anyway, so I think that's that's one of those guys that on the roster, I think that guys really respect as a coach. And I know for Wagner, that was one reason that he's a guy that he's mentioned quite a bit as well. So the other thing Quinn talked about with Jaden Daniels, then he said one of the things he loves about Jaden Daniels, that he has the presence of an older player and the humility of a young player. And I think, again, you see that in what he says and his approach. It's not just his approach, but it's what he says and I think he genuinely means it. Like, hey, he's got a long way to go. He picks the brains of guys. I mean, things like that I think really stand out to teammates, coaches, about what they see in him. And it's why I think they're enthusiastic about him. It's because they see a kid who's putting in the time and trying to learn, and then they see the talent. And then it's a matter, okay, when does it all come together? Don't know. But the early signs have been very good with him, and Quinn has seen them too, and he raved about him. But that was one of the things they said about him. So the other thing too, the competition between Brian Robinson and Austin Ekeler came up, and I don't know what kind of competition there really is, because they're both going to play and they're both going to have a big role in this offense. I mean, Ekeler for sure is a third down guy. I think with Robinson, they're seeing that he can do more out of the backfield than they realize. Again, I think you, me, everybody listening probably already knows, like, hey, could have told you that back a couple months ago, that this guy can catch. And I think we've all felt like he could have a bigger role. But Ekeler is here for that reason. And he's a good route runner. And I think like that's going to matter. And I think it's going to matter to have a back like him and a tight end like Ertz for a quarterback like Daniels, like in his first year. Like those are really key. So when people talk about a competition they're both going to play. They're both going to play a lot. So, I think Robinson in the past was like that with Gibson and all that. I don't think he never had a problem with any of that. So, and the other one I want to talk about was Quan Martin. I felt bad. Actually, I taped my show yesterday and I felt bad because like, oh crap, I forgot to mention Quan Martin's interception that maybe you've already heard about or seen, some shots of it on social media, but it was a really, really, really good play. A pass from Mariota down the side. I think it was a wheel route down the sideline, and Martin goes up and tips it and catches it behind his back. And as he's running, he catches it. He got it behind his back and he pulls it up into his front and keeps running. A very, very talented, a very, very terrific play. Quinn brought up that today when he's talking about Martin as a guy that's didn't necessarily say impressive, but a guy that when he was asked about some guys maybe who stood out, he mentioned Martin in that play in particular because they want to take the ball away. No team was better the last 3 years at taking the ball away than the Cowboys. This is Quinn and Joe Witt are the guys who helped them get there. So, but that's one play. But I think my thoughts. I think Martin finished strong last year. I'm a fan of what I think that kid can do because I think he's a very smart player and he's very versatile, and that fits well here. And one of the things that Quinn said is he feels like that Martin has a growing confidence in this system. He said, I'm excited about what he is. So I think, he's a guy that I certainly believe has pushed his way forward throughout the spring. And he was, when they rotated all those guys in the secondary a lot, but usually if you went with a first group now, it would be him with Jeremy Chin back there. And then you'd have Forbes, St. Just, and Sam are still likely at the corners. That's just how, based on spring, like what you see and all that, don't put a lot of stock into all that, because I think that's an ongoing thing for sure. But speaking of Forbes, I was going to talk about him in a minute, but one of the things I did talk to him the other day, he did say he put on some weight, didn't really say how much, but he felt like he was stronger. And the way I see it more is, it's funny because I was talking to somebody I remember last year having a conversation with one of the coaches about him, and just with the size, they didn't feel like the weight was a big issue except for the games against AJ Brown. Now, he also took himself mentally out of those games, but the weight or the size was an issue there. Well, one of the things I've seen him do a few times is a better job being physical with the receivers, whether it's on redirecting on jams, or just jamming a guy on his zone, pushing him out. And I saw him disrupt the timing on one play because of that earlier this week. And then I saw him today a couple times. I don't remember who he was going against. One time was against De'Ami Brown. One time was against Zacchaeus. And he did a good job of just getting his hands on them and then basically winning on the play. And so I think like that's a good step for him, because I think they could really be helped if that kid, if Forbes develops. And I know, keep calling these guys kids, and I always say this, like some of them are younger than my middle child. So to me, they're kind of like you, but doesn't mean to insult them by saying that. They're young men. I get it, but you get what I'm saying. Anyways, but for Forbes, it's a good sign for him that he's taken that to heart with this. And he did tell me he's been working on his footwork, but I think he's worked a lot on just trying to get stronger. And he's never going to be this big guy. He's always going to be a very, very thin guy, but he could get stronger. He definitely needed to get stronger. And we'll see if that continues in camp when pads come on. But that was something I noticed today and a couple times throughout training camp. Anyways, a lot of red zone work and work inside, I guess, the green zone too, 25-yard line and in. Davion Davis, receiver, he's made a couple nice plays this camp. Made a really, really nice diving catch in the back of the end zone for a score. Obviously, back of the end zone and a catch, that would be a touchdown. One thing I saw, Jahan Dotson, one of the things we talked about earlier this week was or maybe even last week, when he had caught a pass where McLaurin was really pumped because he used his hands. He felt like at the line of scrimmage to win. Well, I got to be honest. I think that's still a work in progress to see. Is it going to be a lot different? I still believe that where he is at his best is, working against some zone, but also getting him on the move and motioning him to stacks and getting him on crossers or whatever, but motioning him into a stack or a bunch where perhaps you can catch them in maybe the guy's got to play off him a little bit more so he can use his feet to win at the line and then get by a guy. And you'd see that last year. I felt like that's where he was really good. So I'll just be curious to see how they use him this year with all that. And also how he progresses at the line and getting away from press coverage, because there was one where Noah Igbenogany got his hands on him, and it would just press, wasn't a jam, just comes off the line and then gets his hands on him. And he couldn't shake him. He was unable to shake him with the feet. If he was just, he was patient covering Dotson. And so if you're patient and you're not going to jump on the feet, you're going to get him with the hands. And he's got to learn how to get off that part of it to develop. And there are a couple of times that it happened. I'll probably mention this in a minute. In the work in the 25-yard line and in, Daniels had back-to-back really nice plays to Brian Robinson, really nice throws to Brian Robinson. Good route by Robinson, but excellent touch and velocity on the ball. So in other words, a good combo, just good touch, right? The right velocity with the right touch. On the first one, there's a seam ball over on the right side. Robinson comes out of the backfield, little shake, gets inside, and right there, Anthony Pittman, the linebacker, there's no one, he wasn't being covered man-to-man. But Pittman comes flying over. Actually, he didn't do the shake there. That was on the other route. Pittman comes flying over, but the ball is boom right there as soon as he saw it. And this is one of the things, again, we talk about arm talent. That's arm talent. You're not hesitating. You're seeing it and you're going right now. That's what he does on the play, and Robinson scores. On the next play, Daniels looks left, works back to the middle to Robinson. This time throws it over the top of Pittman. Really nice touch on the ball. Nice grab by Robinson. Just a good play. And just overall a good job in that area. Let's see. Oh, the other thing that they did a good job with creating some better looks in the red zone. There were a couple times where, whether through motion, the action of the play, the combination of both, shifting, etc., it created open targets. And there was one time where the target was on the left. It was Austin Eckler, walks in for a score because nobody was there. And I'll be honest, I got to remember the whole play. It's spring. There's just, it's shorts and it's underwear Olympics. I get it, but it was good. It was the action of the play was really good. Then the next one from about the 2-yard line, you had two tight ends to the right. I think it was Cole Turner on the line and it was Ertz. And then you had Ben Sinnott going in motion left to right, getting over to the guard, right? He's I think it was behind the guard. So on the play, what was good is I think a fake dive. You had both tight ends running crossers, to the left, and that just leaves the outside open for Sinnott. And boom, nice pass by Daniels. Easy money, folks. And so whether it was a 2-point conversion or a touchdown, it was in the end zone. So, but it was the motion and action of the play, and you've seen that a few times where I think with Kingsbury is done, and the combination of Kingsbury, I don't know how much like Brian Johnson, and then Anthony Lynn with all that, just the combo of all that is creating some good motion. But I think a lot of that is obviously Kingsbury because this was his offense. Anyway, and I already talked about Forbes. That was on my list here. I jumped ahead of that. The other thing, there's the field goal kickers. You had Ahmed and Haversick. Ahmed went 5 for 5, I think it was. Now I'm going to check my notes here real quick because I can't remember if he was 5 for 5 or 3 for 3. He made one from 33 yards, 43 and 48. And then from 53, the 53 guys were gathered around him on the 48-yarder and the 53-yarder. On the 53-yarder, slightly high snap, Tress Way gets the good hold through the uprights, bingo. Then Haversick goes next. On his first attempt was a 33-yarder wide left. Not a good sign for a tryout guy. And it's funny because because he's a tryout guy, he doesn't have a name. He didn't have his name on his back of his jersey. And one of them referred to him as a no-name kicker, which he is right now for them. 42-yarder drilled, 48-yarder good, and then 53-yarder off the left upright. So listen, folks, the kicking competition is going to continue into training camp, and it wouldn't shock me if there's a new kicker in here before the start of training camp, because I think they're going to be looking for that for a little bit. So anyway, that's the wrap up for day 3 of minicamp and a little wrap up of the overall season from my point of view. I will be back on Monday with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders, talking about the offseason. Still going to do shows every week throughout this dead period, and taking a look at some NFC East teams. Going to be talking to Jaden Daniels and his guy, a quarterbacks coach who's worked with him since he was 10 years old. Got a couple guys that I'm excited about if it comes through. So hopefully, they do. And we'll keep this rolling. And it's not going to be every day. It will not be 4 times a week. There's not going to be that much to talk about, but there will be 2 to 3 shows every week from now until the start of training camp. So stay with us, and there you go. I appreciate you tuning in. Talk to you next time.